Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this October 5th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, and you're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can catch my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on First Amendment Radio, Pacific Time. They also play the show at 11 a.m., and if you can't get it there, go to my long-standing website at arcticbeacon.com. Also, if you are a YouTube fanatic, you can get all my shows, as a number of people put every one of them up, and you can find that scattered all over the web, and check it out. All right, well, listen, today I promised to get back to my long-running series called The Greatest Off-Broadway Stage Play Ever Produced in the History of Mankind. This is part 17. The 2016 presidential elections, and I take a view that I'm nothing more than a movie reviewer watching a reality TV show, and today we're going to talk a little bit about that. But there's a number of little interesting stories before I get to that series, and boy, aren't you tired of it? I have to do this series. I've had to watch almost every debate. I've had to watch almost all the news clips just to keep up with what this reality show is all about. It's really a fantasy, if you want to really talk about it. Truthfully, it is one of the biggest reality shows. They're really upstaging themselves with this one. And it's just amazing to me how most Americans believe this is really true, that these people are really, what they're saying is really true, and that's what amazes me the most, and I'll get into that. But there's a lot of interesting stories going on that may or may not affect your life. Let's start out with the weather. Category 4 storm right now, headed towards, it just leveled Haiti. I haven't heard really reports on the damage there, but it's headed towards the east coast of Florida. By the time it gets there, and then it'll work its way into South Carolina, they're saying Category 4. That's one of the biggest, because they only go to Category 5, and this is packing 140 mile-an-hour winds, and they're telling people to evacuate right now. We'll see how that plays out. Also, I found it interesting, if you live in Southern California, they put out a warning. They said there's a real big increase in the earthquake possibility, especially for Southern California, Los Angeles, San Diego, because it hasn't erupted for 400 years, and usually it blows its lid every 300. So right now they're scaring the hell out of people with a lot of weather stuff, and my point is, let's look at a little bit of weather control. So Google that, see what you can find out. Otherwise, I could spend the whole show on it. Secondly, one of the stories that's getting overlooked by the presidential elections is what's going on now between America and Russia. In Russia, they just had a drill where 40 million people were told how to get to bunkers. They're doing a safety drill there. That's interesting. 40 million people being told where to go and how to get to these bunkers for safety. Secondly, the Russian embassy was just attacked. There was an attack on the Russian embassy in Damascus. Putin is supposedly worried that the United States is preparing to attack. And of course, the United States is saying Russia is preparing to attack. This ceasefire in Syria has deteriorated, and now there are no, Kerry came out, that's our Secretary of State. I wonder how many words a minute he can type. That's about what he should be doing, working in some office typing instead of representing America, because he's not. So Kerry said that we're breaking off talks with Russia. We're not speaking to them anymore because they have not met their end of the bargain in the Syria peace talks. All right. So we got a huge conflict arising there. And I get a lot of my news from people in that area, and it's not a pretty sight. So keep that in mind while you're watching this great presidential debate and all these elections and all this stuff going on. You know, you're hearing rumblings already of all election fraud, how many people, they're finding, people that have been dead for 20 years on ballots in certain states now. So, I mean, we shouldn't call it election. We should call it a selection. They've already selected. We're just in this to have, if you think that this is a fair proposition for the American people, forget about it. It's a good show, by the way. I might add. I'm glad that at least they're giving me a good show if I'm destined to watch this stuff every day. But anyway, another important story that I've been talking about the last couple of days, and this is for Christians and people of faith all over the world to get behind getting Tony Alamo out of jail. You can go to my website at arcticbeacon.com, and you can also go to alamoministries.com. They're putting up the link. In fact, I got a word that some people actually went to the debates yesterday in Virginia and started passing out, trying to get some signatures to get Tony freed. So this is spreading. Now, my advice to people is this. There's an online petition, and go there and do that. But if you really want to help, you can copy that petition I wrote, put it on a nice piece of paper, and then what you do is you get a couple other pieces of paper and number them from 1 to 100. And when you're out and about at a grocery store or something, and you want to get into a good conversation about Christianity and what's really happening in the world, get signatures that way. And I'm planning to put up a website called Free Tony Alamo, and do that so you'll be able to print out a copy of that and then scan it back to me, and then we can add the names. There's a lot of people still don't like to go online, believe it or not. And can you blame them? Listen to this story that just came out today. You know how the NSA in the past has been the security agency, tries to go in the back door of all of emails and get all the information they want on anybody. Now, what they're using that information for, who knows? But today it's been found out that Yahoo gave the government access, front door access, to all of their emails. And what does that mean? They can, for example, if I'm sitting in a coffee shop in, let's say, in Rome, and I send an email to you in New York, they can actually read that email before you do, because the email goes to a server at Yahoo. The government now has access to every Yahoo email they want, and they can actually get it before you get it. And here's how that works. When it goes through Yahoo, or probably any of these emails, there's certain words that are flagged. Imagine Vatican. Then they say they're only looking for terrorists. I think they're looking for any kind of dissident that's going to stop the New World Order from really moving into full swing, which, we're pretty close to that now. But anyway, so words are, they got words that are flagged, and immediately those emails go to the government or whoever. I don't know how they can keep track of so many. But they got front door access to this. Now, it used to be back door. Now they're in the front door, so they can get your emails even before you send it. So when you worry about putting your name out there, don't worry about it. I mean, they know everything anyway, so you might as well just get off your chest what you want to say and, stand for freedom, stand for something. Because if you don't stand for something, then you're going to fall. I mean, it's that simple. Do the right thing. And what did Mark Twain say? If you do the right thing, you're never wrong. Pretty simple. If you tell the truth, you don't have to make up stories and worry about what you said. So, a little advice on emails and what they really want to do now. To add injury to insult, Obama just gave over the internet to the UN, which means that we created the internet. We had control of all of the IP addresses and everything, but he just, as of October 1st, turned that over to an international organization. So whatever the hell's going to happen to it, I don't know. But there again is another nail in the coffin of American of our sovereign rights here in America. I mean, why would you give this over to an international group when we created it. We're already losing through hacking and all this kind of stuff. A lot of our secrets, a lot of our, many things are getting into the hands of people that don't have any intentions of doing any good for America. So those are just some of the stories that are affecting you today. And we have to get back to this stage play, this what I call the greatest stage play or television movie or movie you've ever seen in the history of mankind, being performed right before your very eyes. And basically what I do is I look at this as a movie producer, or a movie reviewer, and take a look at the actors that they've placed in these roles, because that's all they are. And the main actors this year, you know them, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump, putting on a grand show. And really what the show is all about, I try to look at it from a standpoint of how they're performing in their roles, for one. And of course, the Hillary Clinton character, she's now 69 years old, still on stage. She's been around for, 30, 40 years, ever since she married Bill Clinton and began to, their marriage is on look at their whole marriage. It is really basically a marriage of convenience and power. Bill is a womanizer. She is a lesbian. And they really haven't, Bill's womanizing's come out of the closet. But her lesbianism still hasn't. So maybe that's what they have planned for the future for us. You never know. You never know what they're going to do. So the backdrop, she's been around a long time, so they still have her on the stage. And it's quite interesting what they've been doing with her. She's on her last leg, some people say. And I look at it as a reviewer. She has collapsed, couldn't get into her car. She's supposedly come down with pneumonia in this stage play this year. She's had these coughing spurts when she's on the campaign trail that go on for 3 to 4 minutes. A couple times she went into spasmodic attacks when asked questions by a reporter. And you can see her head bobbing around like she was a bobblehead doll. And now she seems perfectly fine. There have been many, many things that have happened. I could spend the whole half hour regarding whether she has a body double, which we found out there is someone who plays Hillary Clinton's body double. The recent debates were quite interesting. They were fixed. I mean, the questions they gave her were softball questions. Some people said in the movie that she had the questions in advance so she could, they all have it in advance. It's like a script. They give everybody everything. And the script for that debate was so ridiculous. She supposedly even had a teleprompter in her podium, as well as wearing a mic. I mean, this goes on and on and on. And I think they do this to kind of like spice up the movie a little bit. But let's talk a couple things that behind the scenes, who this woman really is on stage, what they want to do with her, and whether she's going to keel over when she's selected as president. I mean, some people say she really has a serious problem and has 3 to 5 years to live. And she was diagnosed with this in 2013. This is all a part of the play, you see. And who have they selected as the VP? None other than Tim Kaine, a Jesuit. He's even come out and told us he's spent a year in the mission, was a missionary with the Jesuits. He's a card-carrying Catholic, etc., etc. And that leads me to one interesting thing. Why don't we do this for a second to have some fun? Because like I said, I wanted to always talk about, so we're looking at the character Hillary, Clinton. They've also depicted her as the biggest thief, liar, in the history of politics. I mean, I don't think there's, we don't know much about certain presidents, but we do know in the past, because there wasn't an internet, right? But never have I seen a character with more flaws. I mean, she's actually a criminal. If you look at her background and her husband's background, I believe they've been responsible for many murders. They don't want to bring that up yet. And when you look at the hit list involving Clinton, it's amazing. And he goes way back, even with Tony Alamo, the story that I'm doing to get Tony freed. Clinton was after Tony years ago. That's why Tony sits in jail. Clinton, Tony had a mission, a ministry in Arkansas. And guess what? Clinton was the governor, and boy, he was coming after Tony with all guns. So this goes deep. And these people are not Christians. These people are not Christians. And one thing that you have to understand about her, and I want you to, let's see if we could do this real quick. I want to play, people say, well, where does she come from? What do they want to do with her? Well, we've talked about her Jesuit connections and Clinton's Jesuit connections. They are definitely connected to the Jesuits, the Pope, and Lucifer. We've made those connections simply through research. And how about if we do something here? There's a little 3-minute clip here I want to play. One of her mentors is Saul Alinsky. Now, if you don't believe me that the Pope is a Luciferian, let's look at one of her mentors. She loves Saul Alinsky. She's even publicly said it. That was one of her. She read all his books, follows what he does. And basically, Hillary Clinton is a communist. And who created communism? Remember the Paraguay experiments that the Jesuits ran hundreds of years ago on communism? Of course. These guys are the masterminds of all of these religions in the history of mankind, and all of these different, they work with the fascists, they work with democracy, they work with they don't care. They're putting it all together in a little bowl, mixing it up, turning it, and spinning it around and killing everybody, and at the end they get their way. It's called the Hegelian dialectic, and they use it in their movie. And that's why I'm here, to review it, to let you know what this movie's all about. But let's listen to, this was an interview done between someone who was talking about Saul Alinsky and Clinton's connecting them to Lucifer. So let's listen to what they have to say. It only is a couple minutes. Go ahead. Play that for me, will you?
The failure of the philosophy behind it. What is that philosophy? It's communism. Communism. Hillary Clinton is a dyed-in-the-wool communist. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Saul Alinsky. This is going to shock a lot of your audience, but it's just a fact. This is a fact. If we go to Saul Alinsky's book, Rules for Radicals, now you just wrote a book, right? And in your book, you wrote acknowledgement. At the beginning of the book, you wrote acknowledgments, right?
I did.
In Saul Alinsky's book, have you read Rules for Radicals?
I have not read the book, no, but I've read a chunk of it and about it, right. But I don't own the book and I've not read it, no.
Well, listen, I've never read the book either because, it's the same reason I don't eat feces, right? I don't want that in my head.
Right.
But this is from the acknowledgement section of Alinsky's book. This is amazing. This is amazing. It says this. Lest we forget, at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to the very first radical. From all our legends, mythology, and history, the first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did it so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom. Who was that radical? Lucifer. The book is dedicated to Lucifer.
Okay, there we go. Go to that, Rules for Radicals. She loves that book. Saul Alinsky's her man, and he dedicated his book to Lucifer. So there's another connection. So I'm just telling you what they're doing in this movie and who this woman really is. So, what do you think? What else is, this actress, Hillary Clinton, now, some people So we're 35 days away from their selection, and how anyone in their right mind would place a vote for this woman is really amazing to me. But why would they do that? Why would a person, in fact, what made me think about this when I was doing a story yesterday, a friend of mine called me, and we went to law school together, and he had no idea about all the things that I've been watching closely as a movie reviewer of this. He had no idea about Clinton's past, about certain things regarding her lies. Had no idea about, when I got into Lucifer and stuff. That was like, wow. The point I'm trying to get at is, what kind of movie are these people watching? Are they watching the same one I'm watching? Or has it been edited for them? Of course it's been edited. And let me tell you why it's been edited. Okay, I have 3 minutes here, and I want to get this in real quick, so let me do this. Now, they're getting their story from the mainstream media, which is completely bought and sold. They want certain people in office for a reason. They want Clinton in. That's why they're wrapping the other actor, Trump. I mean, it's amazing. But where does it come from? Why is the media so favorable to Clinton for people say, well, I don't know. Well, here's why. Here's why. Bill Clinton, that was President Clinton, that's her husband, deregulated the media industry in his presidency to allow the few to have everything. So now, 6 companies now control over 90% of the media. Now, why do you think they are supporting her? Hillary and Bill, they get paid $250,000 to $300,000 for half-hour speeches from these people. Big bankers, media magnates. When you can hear them free. You can hear them BS and talk for free. Why are they paying them this kind of money? It's called payback. That's all it is. It's a sellout to America. Nobody's calling them out because why should they? The media wants them. These controllers now, they gave them the control, and they want it to stay that way. So Bill and Hillary get paid to do that. It's just payback, that's all. And that's really what they're doing. And so it's a very simple thing if you're really good at figuring out this movie, why they want her there and why they're going to continue to spread lies on this movie screen about Donald Trump. And we'll get into him as well and what his real role is, what his script is in this movie as well. I might not have time today. But what I want to do is in the second half hour start out by showing you this Jesuit connection. The writers of this movie are the Jesuits. The publisher or the producers, I say, are the main ones in Rome, and then it flows down to people like George Soros and all of these other Luciferians that are controlling us. And you're going to see where the connection really comes from. I mean, we have to look at this. And the first thing I want to start out with is very interesting. For all of those of you who, still think the Pope is holier than thou, that the Catholic religion is the mother church, I'm going to ask you one question. Do you believe still that Mother Mary came down here in 1917 and actually talked to 3 little peasant children? Do you believe that? We'll be back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today. so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit DiscountGoldandSilverTrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit DiscountGoldandSilverTrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, welcome back to the second half hour of the Investigative Journal on this October 5th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, and you're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. And you can catch my show every day from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's Monday through Friday, Pacific Time. They also play the show at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. Okay, we're talking today about Part 17 of what I call the greatest off-Broadway stage play ever produced in the history of mankind, the presidential elections. And thank the Lord, they're almost over, 34 days. And then they can select whoever they want to take over the king's throne in the White House, which, by the way, is named after a Jesuit. It's not because of its color. Look into that. But anyway, before I get into the secret of Fatima and like I said, if these actors on this stage, they all believe this stuff because it's all a fantasy. And then the problem is when they say it, the people in the audience, millions of people around the world, believe it to be true when it's not. And the secret of Fatima and all of these Mother Mary apparitions are just a beautiful example of how they manipulate people into believing their movie is true. They don't believe it. They know it's fake. They get a script. They walk around, all these candidates love the Pope. They're all either Protestant ecumenicals that are basically closet Catholics or Catholics themselves, like the vice presidential nominee for the Democrats playing the part of this is Tim Kaine, a Jesuit missionary. It's incredible. But yes, they are really involved and they're in control of this. But anyway, before we do that, everybody's talking about this October surprise. What could it be? And we're starting out the month with the Category 4 hurricane going to hit Florida soon. But anyway, let's not talk about that. There's other things in the works here they have in this movie. Remember what happened a while back with Japan and the bank? And they, if you haven't been following economics, you gotta follow everything, the finances, the wars, and all of their games they're playing, because you never know where they're going to hit you from. So look for things in October to go bad. Maybe traditionally, when things go bad in markets, it's always in October. I don't know why, but that's what happens. And they're going bad now. Now, the only good thing about our economy, they say, is that the stock market is up. And that's a false flag, though, because when the inflated stock market would just plummet if they ever raised interest rates. They're keeping interest rates so low to prop up a failing economy. By the way, we're going into the 6th consecutive quarter in the United States with an S&P 500 negative. So the S&P stocks are down. Negative earnings, that's the big guys. The only reason markets are going up is like the actor Trump did say this. He said the cheap dough going in there. Stock buybacks, mergers, acquisitions. And number two is there's this also possibility of terror strikes, which always fluctuate the markets. And can you imagine a huge one? That would just plummet it. You almost saw it in New York a few weeks back when when they were putting all these bombs all over the place. Now multiply that by 100 times. What would happen if there would be another 9/11 that they orchestrated in their movie? Also, what about the war that's the war words now, which is escalating into hundreds of thousands of deaths in Syria? Also, because this is heating up. And they're putting out more war talk. The anti-Russian propaganda now is nothing like I've ever seen before. It continues, even at the debates going on. Clinton's blaming the Russians for hacking the DNC and hacking the Democratic National Committee. There's absolutely no proof of this. And do you think they have bigger things to do? Well, Julian Assange, we know who Julian is, right? Says he's holding on to information that is going to be detrimental to the actress Hillary Clinton. Now, it's interesting. If you look at Julian Assange, he came into the movie playing a bit part, said, I don't have anything right now, but I'm going to have something soon. So we got a lot going on in October. But let me play this really quick to give you an idea of what we're up against here, where this movie's really coming from. Now remember, we made the connection that the actors involved in this, the main people, are all connected to the writers of the movie, the Jesuits being connected to the Pope, who's one of the major producers, and the Pope also being a Luciferian. Now, years ago they started, the one reason they play these Mother Mary apparitions and making them out to be real is that they worship the sun god, and all of these goddesses, Isis and the rest of these goddesses that they worship, are all really what they've created in Mary in Catholicism. So she's nothing more than a sun goddess. But listen to this little clip, 2-3 minutes, about Fatima and how they create this fantasy in their movie. All of the people in it have to believe it, right? Well, that's the script they get. They realize it's worshiping sun god, but then they want to transfer that to you who believe it's true. 90% of Americans believe it's true, or they go, well, it had to be a miracle if the Pope said it. So let's listen to this little 3-minute explanation of Fatima. This guy did a good job, and how he debunked it. Let's go. He's on to something here.
Did the Virgin Mary give 3 20th century children prophecies of doom? 1917, Fatima, Portugal. Apparitions of the Virgin Mary tells 3 shepherd children 3 secrets. when in 3 years, 2 of the children are dead. The first secret is a vision of hell. The second secret tells of the end of World War I, predicts a Second World War and the fall of communism. The third secret is written down and secured at the Vatican. It will remain a secret until 1960. 1960, Pope John the 23rd decides to lock away the secret forever. Its predictions are not revealed. 12th of May 1982, the last surviving shepherd child, now a Catholic sister, writes to Pope John Paul II. She warns that the third secret tells of the conflict between the Church and Communist Russia. The 26th of June 2000, the Vatican finally releases the third secret. It is rich in religious symbolism, including a prediction of the 1981 assassination attempt on John Paul II, which happened 64 years to the day from the first Fatima apparition. An astounding vision of the future was hidden for 83 years. Or was it? By 1920, there was only one surviving shepherd child. She was known to have a wild imagination and kept the supposed secrets to herself. She did not write down the secrets until decades later, after the end of World War I and the start of World War II. So the predictions were actually revealed after the events. Many of these 1940 statements, now seen as definitive text, contradict what she alluded to in 1917. The prediction of Pope John Paul II's assassination does not match events. The secret refers to a bishop being killed by a group, not the Pope being injured by an individual. This is one part of the Fatima mystery. Watch our Miracle of the Sun video for details of how the children crashed the sun from the sky. Adios.
Okay, so that's quite interesting, isn't it? Now, we've done a lot. Let me get that off. Okay, turn it off for me. Thanks. Okay. Now, let's just look at that a little more closely here. I've done many shows on all these fake Mother Mary apparitions and the money that goes into their pockets at Lourdes, at Fatima, at where else? Medjugorje and others. And it's just a money-making operation, and the money isn't going to the poor, by the way. So here's a perfect example of how they create a myth, make you believe it, and then the secrets are basically all planned out by them. And it's just incredible that people, I know Catholics today, they still believe that this is true. When you really look at it, my goodness, they have taken, that's what I said about this movie, why it's so interesting, is you can go to Hollywood and watch all of the action movies, watch all of their productions, but most people will leave thinking, well, it's just fantasy. But here, they do the same thing, but they get you to believe that it's real. And that is why I cover this story. Now, people asked me, how did you become such an astute movie reviewer? Where did you learn how to do this? And I said, well, I was a dumb movie reviewer when I was a journalist in Rome. And the first time I started to really get an idea of what the Jesuits were all about. Now, I'd covered a lot of the Vatican misdoings, misgivings. I was there during the Vatican Bank scandal, and saw close hand how they used the Vatican Bank as a money laundering operation. But I had no idea of all their hidden agendas, of what they've been doing, how they deceive people. And the first time I was aware of it came in kind of a strange way. Back then there was a book that came out called The Messianic Legacy. And it was a book written by 2 or 3 journalists from London. And one of them turned out to be, I think he still edits the Freemasonry magazine there in London. But anyway, this book laid out the bloodline of Christ. It laid out a story completely discrediting the Christian version of Christ on the cross and resurrection, and said that he never was killed, that he lived, and his bloodline still he fled to Paris or to France, and his bloodline still exists today in the form of this man who runs the Prieuré de Sion in France, in Paris. Jacques de Plantard was his name. So, being an inquisitive journalist at the time and having all of these priests at my disposal, sitting down at a coffee shop right parallel to the Vatican, and that street's quite interesting as well. If you go there today, you'll see it's full of all these stores that sell these trinkets, the rosaries and the holy water, all this stuff. But I got to know the people on that block. There's a little coffee shop there. And one of the owners told me the story of the street. He said, "Do you realize what they call this street? What it used to be called?" I said, "What?" He said, "The Strada di Buttani." And in Italian, that's the street of whores. And I said, "Wow, why did they call it that?" He said, "Well, up until just about after World War II, this whole street was filled with brothels and filled with women that would take care of all the priests who weren't homosexuals and wanted to have sexual relations. But because it was so close to the Vatican, and now more people after the war were coming to see and to be tourists, and they moved the street. Now it's about 3 or 4 miles away, and they turned this into a more wholesome environment for all of the tourists. So that was quite an interesting aside. Secondly, I sat there a number of times, and a couple of priests would come by that I knew, and they'd sit down, and I asked them about this Messianic legacy, this book, and thinking that they believed in the story of Christ. And I was talking maybe to a higher level priest. He told me, "No, this is a strategy that's used by those who hate the Vatican. And every now and then they put out something like this, or you'll see." Then he said, "You have to go to the newspapers and read the stories, because every now and then they're going to put out a story that says the bloodline of Christ exists and your whole Christian religion is fake." And I said, "Wow, why would they do that to you, Father?" And they said, "Well, they want to destroy Christianity." And I said, "Well, what do you do?" "Well, they blackmail us. They want money from us." And I said, "Do you give them money to shut up?" And he said, "Well, I don't know about that." Well, anyway, it struck my interest. So, thinking of a way to get to Paris, to visit Paris, I said, maybe I can convince one of my people I work for, an editor, that this would make a great story if I went down and found Jacques Plantard, who supposedly was carrying the bloodline of Christ. Now, this was going on in the early 80s, right? And wouldn't that make a great story? And so he said, "Well, go ahead." And so I got my little trip to Paris funded, so to speak. Didn't cost much anyway. So I go down there, and they actually had an address. So I figured this is going to be easy. I'm going to go there. I'm going to find this guy. I'm going to do this great story. I'm going to send it back to America. And wow, watch how people are going. Christians will really freak out, right? Because I wasn't a Christian back then. I grew up a Catholic, so I grew up with all these false ideas that the Mother Mary apparitions were true, and when you go to a mass, that's really you're getting God into your every time you take the host, God is coming into you. I didn't realize that was like the killing of Jesus every day, and it was all satanic and all occult. So at that point in my life, I said, "Man, that would make a great story. I'll become famous," which, I tell people, yeah, I had a big ego back then. Sure, I wanted to get the biggest stories. I wanted to find the most important things. Typical journalist. But anyway, so I go to Paris. I find, spent the night, had a nice breakfast in the morning, spent the night, get up, try to find this, Jacques Plantard in his office, the Priori de Sion. That's that organization that, remember in Angels and Demons, they depicted it. So anyway, I finally get there, and I go and knock on the door, and nobody answers. So I go away, come back again, nobody answers. I spent 2 or 3 days, and I could never find it. Finally, I get there. Before I'm leaving, I go, I'll give it one more try. So I go there and knock on the door, and lo and behold, this woman peeks her head through the door. And it was the scariest thing. It was secret. Like, who are you? I go, well, I'm here to talk with Jacques Plantard. I'm a journalist, and I heard he had the bloodline of he's a descendant of Christ, and I thought it'd make a good story. And she said, there's no one here by that name. I said, well, do you know of him? She goes, no. I said, well, here it says right here that the Priori de Sion's address is this. She said, you must have the wrong address. I said, well, do you know where I can find them? She said, no, and slams the door. Well, that piqued my interest, so I started checking around and started talking to people in the neighborhood best I could. I tried, I didn't speak French, so occasionally I'd find somebody that spoke English to help me. And nobody ever heard of it. It was a fake. So I went back to my editor and I said, man, I didn't get a story, but I have a story. And so I put together that story about how this is fake and tried to verify that. Where does this come from? Who did it? And so that story never got printed anywhere. I wrote it and it just disappeared. But it didn't stop me from continuing. And this is how I became the great movie reviewer of today. And the movie is, you know what it is. The whole scenario, the big show right now is the presidential elections, but this movie takes on a worldwide scope, right? So I started researching it a little bit more. And the more I found, the more it came back to the Vatican itself. And what I mean is this. I had people telling me that, yes, the Jesuits plant this information so that the media can pick it up, and they create this conflict themselves. I go, well, why would they do that? I was dumb back then. And so here we have, I had information that the actual church itself, the people running the Vatican or the Jesuit order, create this fake information to fight amongst themselves, to have Christians fight, or to bring this Hegelian dialectic together, chaos, right? So the words of that priest that told me that there's this organization that wants to destroy Christianity, that blackmails the Vatican, turns out to be the Vatican itself. And that I could never get printed. In fact, had a hard time proving it because, secret societies cover their tracks pretty well. But that led me to really start understanding who these people are. So that's how it began for me. And I'm sure you all have your stories as well. But with the 3 minutes I have left, let's look at the big picture here. And when I do part 18, we'll start getting into really how they're using these actors. Trump being the nationalist, he's saying a lot of good things about what's happened to America. Clinton being the globalist. But do all of their roots go back to the producers and the writers, the Jesuits? And are they doing it just like they played that game with the Messianic legacy? Are they playing that game with us in this movie? Is that their script? Are they playing the Hegelian dialectic, the nationalist versus the globalist, rubbing them both together? And then, whichever way it turns out, they win. Now think about that. And the real problem here is that if we just viewed it as a movie and then got up in the morning and the world was a completely different place, a true place to live, it wouldn't be so bad, right? But when it's really a fantasy that they've created to control you, and you walk into it every day thinking it's true, and not knowing what's behind it, the hidden agenda behind it, it makes it quite dangerous. Because in this movie, actually, people die, people get deceived, people get jailed and imprisoned like Tony Alamo for 175 years for, in a sense, cracking their code. That's all we're doing, is reporting this as a movie and saying, listen, this is not what they're telling you. This is the game they're playing with you. And the dangerous thing about it is these people that have cracked their code, like Tony Alamo, like others, Tupper Saucy, many of you too have cracked it. And they haven't gotten to us yet. But they will. That's the danger here. And that's why this movie needs to be dissected, understood for what it is. A fantasy, a game, a script they've been writing for hundreds of years for one goal. And it's very simple. But no one can, 90% of people can't really believe it's, they believe what they hear, but they don't want to believe the truth about the hidden agenda and the truth that they're going to turn this world into a one-world government, a one-world religion that's satanic to control you. And in the process, they're going to kill a lot more people. Because don't forget, more people have been killed by the Vatican in the history of the world than any other organization. And don't forget, the reason I call them the producers is the producers are the ones with the most money. And in our next little presentation, part 18, I'm going to play a little clip I found of a bishop being confronted by a person that has broken the code, a nice person that's Christian that really asks some great questions from this Catholic bishop in Minneapolis. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.